What famous person in history who is idolized was actually a horrible person? As long as Mr. Rogers isn't anywhere on this list, I can sleep soundly. Martha Washington. Oh sure, everyone just remembers her as a little old lady in a mop cap dwarfed by her giant husband, but that woman was terrifying. She ruled with a savvy and iron hand, and she was known to yank George down by his collar during their arguments so they could be face to face. She kept her half-sister in slavery, and during the war a few of the slaves, including the cook named Hercules, ran away. Her letters to George ordering him to hunt them down are freaking chilling. She fought freeing anyone tooth and nail, despite George's thoughts on the matter. She ruthlessly took hold of the Virginian rumor mill when she was a Custis to maintain firm social control, leaking family secrets like her father-in-law writing up a will that gave a huge amount to his black son Jackie as a way to undermine people's perception of his mental competency. The will, by the way, was torn up and the Custis patriarch rewrote it to benefit Martha's husband. No one should have known about the destroyed will. There's theories that he only rewrote it because Martha played an expert game of emotional chess and gave Jackie large gifts through her husband's lawyer. The lawyer told Custis Sr. that the gifts came from his son, who hated Jackie. Yet, she convinced an elderly man that his illegitimate black son was loved by his legitimate white son so he wouldn't have to make everything public in a will because his white son would take care of Jackie. She proceeded to inherit freaking everything and Jackie died young without actually taking a hold of what the will promised. She freaking played that old man, and then proceeded to trash talk him after he died to ensure that the rest of the will could be challenged as mental incompetency. It's my estimation that every man ever got a statue made of him was one kind of zombie or another. Malcolm Reynolds. Except for the hero named Jane. Dr. Seuss cheated on his wife, who had cancer, then married his mistress after his wife died. After she committed suicide. Jebediah Springfield was a pirate and tried to kill George Washington. Typical Shelbyville propaganda. Jimmy Superfly Snuka almost certainly murdered his girlfriend in the 80s and is still in the WWE Hall of Fame. Bill Cosby wrote a kid's book called My Big Lie. This beginning reader book is about a boy Little Bill who tells a huge lie that's about to be exposed, so he admits he lied rather than risk facing even greater consequences and humiliation. Little Bill decides lying is a bad idea and his parents reward him with hugs for making such a good decision. The back of the book says, what started as a tiny fib grew and grew and grew into a big lie, and now Little Bill is in big trouble. Not an accurate synopsis of the book, but how prophetic for Big Bill. Horrible, horrible person. Hopefully people no longer idolize him. I'm still in shock his career lasted as long as it did. John Dillinger. He made a living stealing money from innocent people at gunpoint and killing any cop who tried to stop him. He was so dangerous that when they finally tracked him down they snuck up and shot him in the back of the head. The movie about him featuring Johnny Depp makes it seem like his death was some sort of tragedy. That is common with a lot of criminals from the Wild West through to today, especially during Prohibition era. Frick, look at Billy the Kid and his gang. Henry Ford hated Jews and had a picture of Hitler on his desk. Hitler kept a life-sized portrait of Ford. I'm pretty sure even Marcus Aurelius is in heck for something. Jan Michael Vincent was a ruthless authoritarian dictator. Thomas Jefferson was mixed. I would call him a flawed great man rather than horrible. He argued for ending slavery but had slaves and fricked them. Then when he died, his estate set his bastard children free but sold all the others. He pretty firmly believed that black people were inherently inferior. I believe he even tasked the nation's scientists with figuring out why. Charlie Chaplin wasn't exactly horrible, but a bit sketchy when you look into the women he married. The craziest thing I've ever heard about Chaplin was that he stole J.D. Salinger's girlfriend. Chuck Berry, pedophile, pervert, kidnapper and generally just an butthole. His cousin Marvin, however, probably not as bad as the others, but Kurt Cobain, where he was a kid, he killed a cat and hid it in his house. When his family found it, he started laughing. Raising a kid while addicted to H wasn't very responsible, either. I was listening to a podcast about Cobain and his death, and was struck by how everyone involved was such an butthole. Like, Love is no sin, but everyone makes her out to be Satan while ignoring Cobain's atrocious behavior. Bing Crosby was an abusive and distant father. Go to beat him with a bag of sweet Valencia oranges. Doesn't bro see him and teaches him who's boss. Not a person but definitely PETA. They put no research into their work and insist 100% of farming mistreats animals when in fact their help is more harmful than anything. PETA also runs America's largest kill shelters. Australia. Ned Kelly. Pretty much our version of Robin Hood. He and his family were criminals for sure, but I'm sure the reason he is remembered as a hero was because he stood up to the corrupt and racist police. Mao Zedong. He killed more people than Stalin and Hitler, destroyed traditional Chinese culture and started a nationwide famine. He did shut the door on foot binding, so he's got that going for him. Winston Churchill. Great wartime leader, crap person, defended Boer concentration camps, huge imperialist, refused to send food to India during the famine which ended up killing 3 million. Forced Kenyan children into concentration camps because he thought white settlers had more right to the land, etc. I'm sure there's a lot more, but yeah, kind of disappointing to find out as a Brit when you've grown up being taught in history that he's considered one of, if not the greatest Englishman of all the time. Cliché yes, but Christopher Columbus. The United States needs to remove Columbus Day. The entire Tudor monarchy leaves a bad taste in my mouth when concerned with English history, as does Queen Victoria. She is idolized as some great queen, yet the poor suffered despicably. Martin Luther. I live in Halle in Germany near Wittenberg where he was born, and everyone is losing their crap right now because of the anniversary, treating him like a son, which is pretty ironical if you think about it, ignoring all the not so pleasant things he said. Alexander the Great. Arguably, I would say Columbus bit more, and more people seem to realize that he wasn't that great. I know Columbus was a dong, but I don't think he bit people. Custer. Everything is named after him in the Midwest, but he was a murderous dong. And an idiot, to top it all off. Most of them. We are all humans. You can dig up dirt on nearly every famous person, past or present. I don't think we could find any on Mr. Rogers. Winston Churchill. He had a hand in some very, very unpleasant things to Africa and held the opinion that they were directly inferior to Europeans. Andrew Jackson was a horrible human being, a serial killer, and a genocidal maniac, yet he has a massive fan club nowadays for beating a would-be assassin with a cane and teaching a parrot how to swear. He wasn't a badass. He was a brutal killer responsible for the systematic genocide of many Native American groups and the Trail of Tears. On Inauguration Day, Trump was grinning ear to ear, having chosen to display Jackson's portrait because people had said how alike they were. I was like, hey butthole, that wasn't a compliment. Thomas Edison. Found Tesla. Steve fricking Jobs. He was a great innovator, but a big C of a person. Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill. He was responsible for the Trail of Tears despite the Supreme Court saying the government couldn't kick Native Americans off their land. I don't know if he counts as famous, but Joseph Smith was pretty sketchy. He was absolutely atrocious, but there is an entire religion that nearly worships him. Honestly though, Brigham Young was way worse and he has a school named after him. Gandhi. It turns out he was a notorious warmonger. Thank goodness India did not have nuclear weapons during his time. I know this is supposed to be a joke, but he did some very questionable things, like refuse to let his wife get medical treatment. Justice William O. Douglas. Although he is considered a widely progressive justice, he treated his law clerks terribly, refused to allow them to edit his opinions but expected them to know exactly what his reasoning is in his decisions. He obviously expected clairvoyance out of his staff. Apparently, he had a stroke in 1974, yet refused to retire for almost a year because he didn't want Ford appointing his replacement. During his final year on the court, with his illness, kept interrupting court when he could make it with his pain and agony, and when he was away it slowed the process of the court. It got to the point where every other justice signed a letter to him telling him to resign, but it took almost a year. I will admit that Douglas was pretty bad. But I can't help but think that McReynolds takes the cake as the worst Supreme Court justice. I mean, the sole reason there was no official 1924 Supreme Court photo is because the seniority-based seating required him to sit next to a Jew, which he refused to do. Not to mention he was pretty open with his disrespect of women and black people. I would say Edison. He didn't invent crap, not even the light bulb. He had just stolen past designs and made slight improvements to them, and then used PR to make himself look like the sole inventor. He also stole one of his apprentice's inventions, the kinetograph, and made a monopoly on the early film industry in America. He also blocked Tesla, who could have literally changed the way our lives are powered if Edison wasn't so greedy. On a similar note, Tesla was pro-eugenics. The Columbine shooters. Before you say they aren't idolized, go on Tumblr and look them up. They have hordes of fangirls drawing fan art and dedicating entire blogs to them. Tumblr is a very weird place. Woody Allen, who adopts a child only to frick them and marry them at like 15 or some crap. Fuck it up. Cole Malone is hailed as one of the greatest power forwards of the game. Absolutely beast on the court. Off the court, well, to put it lightly, he raped underage girls and even got one pregnant and refused to support the child. Rasputin. He ran a dogfight ring. H.P. Lovecraft. One of the most influential horror writers of the 20th century. His Cthulhu mythos has been the inspiration for many a book and movie. However, he was a huge racist and eugenicist even for his time. Coco Chanel. She ratted her Jewish business partner out to the German police so she could regain power of a bad business deal she had done on herself. Probably most of them. Steve Jobs. Leonardo DiCaprio. He was a great inventor and way ahead of his time, but he ripped off people using penny stocks. I also heard he had slaves. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.